Okay, so I'm Ben, this is Karen. We both work on the Collections in the Landscape project, so it's an HLF funded project, which on one hand is about refurbishing Buxton Museum and Art Gallery, so a small council-run museum. But on the other hand, it's also for developing new digital resources, digital experiences to go alongside that refurbishment. What you're seeing on screen, you can go to that website. If you do, be aware it's the kind of live development versions. Things might change, things might be broken. One of the digital experiences that we're developing is a mobile web app. And with that web app, you can go out into the landscape, track down locations and location-based content on those locations that provide some kind of a context or speak to the museum's, the objects you might find in the museum. So the idea is we can encourage people to go out from the museum, find those locations, learn more, then come back and re-experience the objects. I'll switch over and give you a sense of where these things are now placed. So if you're not familiar with the Midlands, they're kind of all bounded within an area between Stoke, Manchester, Sheffield and Nottingham. So it covers quite a large area. You can see the cluster around Buxton at the top of that, and some further down towards Matlock and Derby. They're also subdivided by themes. There's content there about local art, local stories, local archaeology, and a bunch more things in there. Now, the project, I guess, started out with the ambition of just providing a new way of engaging with a new sort of tourist, so people that turn up and expect to be able to communicate through museums with mobile phones and other types of technology. And I guess our ambitions widened considerably, I think, to being more about co-creating content and experiences with local communities and local institutions. So we've gone from this idea of making some static trails people to experience that might go stale quite quickly, towards being this living thing where we build the content experiences with local people. And obviously one big group of stakeholders we're working with is schools and teachers and learners. So I'm going to hand over.
Yes, so I'm putting together the formal learning aspect of the project. I'm also the project evaluator. And it was through the project evaluation that we thought, well, actually this would work really well with schools because it would be a different way of engaging with a collection by taking the children into the landscape after a museum visit. So Buxton Museum and Art Gallery is a county council-run museum, so resources are scarce, so any formal learning offer has to be sustainable, it's going to be self-led. And also they wanted it to be developed with and for local schools, and that's how we've worked really, we're sort of engaging with schools locally. We think there's a fantastic opportunity here to co-create content with teachers, and we think there are various different ways of doing this. We're currently working with local teachers, we're working with schools councils as well, so getting input from children. We think there's potential to work with parents and carers as well, that they could use this as a way of helping their children if they're doing a project on prehistory or the Romans, they could actually do one of these trails. Well, the way that we plan to work now, the gallery's just reopened, so we're organising VIP sort of behind-the-scenes visits for teachers, and we're hoping then to link with the workshops that Ben and Joe, who's the collections officer, have developed, which will help teachers to understand how the apps work and how they can create content and how they can then use that as a learning resource, and hopefully they will put challenges and content up there that will link into the learning resource. In terms of development so far, we've trialled it with a couple of groups of Year 3 and Year 4. And we didn't actually have a random trail. We created a narrative, really. And it was for, we're looking at Neolithic. So we set off from the museum. We went to the top of the slopes, which is a public park just opposite the museum, and got the children to imagine that they were Neolithic children and what would they see from that vantage point. We then talked about how the animals would have been attracted to the spring at the bottom of the hill, so we stalked the animals down to hunt them, and then we went from there into Pavilion Gardens, where there are some fine sites where there's sort of evidence of Neolithic settlements, and also one of the earliest Neolithic houses has been, well, we're not sure if it's a house or a farm or what it is, but it was found in that area. So with the trails, the children could then work out how big that building was. They could act out sort of the activities that people would have done in that time. And we also did some literacy activities as well. And then they came back up to the gallery. So there's been quite a lot of learning around that. One of the main things is safety. We can't really have randomised trails if it's a school visit because you've got too many things to think about. And also how teachers, local teachers might use the app and how teachers from further afield might use the app. And the technology, which is the usual thing. We think it may be that the museum will have to have tablets there for teachers to use rather than relying on them downloading and being able to use it that way. Back to you, Ben.
So, 'cause I think I've got time, it's worth saying this is just a WordPress site, quite heavily customised to do location-based things behind the scenes. But that means that it's quite easy for people to add content in. So if you've seen WordPress before, you'll be familiar with this screen, you know how it works. Essentially, there's just a map on the bottom of each post to turn it into a location-based thing. So we've worked with teachers. Teachers is a big group of people that we've made trails with so far, but we've also done a wider plan of training up the local community. So I've been travelling around Peak District in Derbyshire, running day-long training workshops to talk people through how to use this back end of the website, how to author content, so technically how to do it, but also what makes good location-based content out in the field.
And I've also spoken to people like Peak Parks about how they might link into an education visit as well, so they can use it. They can use this app as well with their visits, and also schools can use it locally to themselves as well.
Yeah. So what we're ending up with is a big pool of content that is roughly organised into themes and locations, but from which teachers can pull out bits of content they may have made themselves, other people have made to turn into trails that are relevant to their lessons. And visitors, so normal tourists, can turn up and put together trails that are made up from content they like. And the final mechanism we've got, because this is all about keeping it sustainable, so coming up with mechanisms so that the museum, with their limited amount of staff, don't have to sit there making new content every month. We're also going to run challenges, or we'll start running challenges soon on the website to ask more simply for contributions from the public. So around a particular focused question, there might be a gap in the collection, we can ask people for specific things, and we can go through the process of seeing them upload content, and then possibly come in to workshops in the museum to help filter through that content and work out whether what they contributed was really relevant, and to help turn it into digital content that goes into the apps later on. So that's kind of rambling, but there's a big advert to say I've got it here on an iPad that you can have a look at with me walking it through if you want to see it. Okay.
That's it.